Hello, hello, hello. Hello, everyone. Happy Wednesday. Happy Women's Wednesday to you all. And welcome to Women in Blazers. We're so excited to have you join us tonight for some great conversation. I have received so many women comments about tonight's conversation. Let us know where you're from and like the show and share. You know how we do it right here at Women in Blazers. We always encourage women. If you hear something that you like, make sure you like it and you share it. That's how we know, because you like it and you share it. But we're so excited about tonight's topic. It is one that is very dear and personal to me, why women should ask for more money. And for those of you that are watching for the very first time, my name is Elisha B. Cash, and I am the host of Women in Blazers. And I am joined tonight by two fabulous women that are joining us from two different locations. We have Angela Hooper, and she's going to tell me how to say her last name and get me straight on that. But she's joining us from New Jersey. And then we have Jasmine, who is joining us from New York. And so I would like for them to go ahead and introduce themselves so we can dive into tonight's great conversation. I can already attest, and let me say this, that these women are experts. I love bringing experts to the table, and they are experts by right, by profession, on tonight's topic. And so guys, just jump in and introduce yourselves.
All right, well, I'll go. I'm Angela Hooper-Menifield. I am the Chief Equipping Officer of Menifield and Associates LLC, where we build and equip supervisors and teams, and also empower and inspire women leaders to have the life that they desire. I'm located in Newark, New Jersey, and I'm excited to be here.
Thank you so much for having me, Alicia. I'm really excited as well. So I am Jasmine Escalera. I'm a career and confidence coach, and I help women of color confidently make their next career move and, of course, get paid their worth, because we want all of our ladies making more money. I am calling in from Brooklyn, New York, and I have my 4-year-old dog hanging out next to me. So hopefully he stays quiet.
Well, I hope he stays quiet too. We know how that goes. We are lovers of pets, and they're just like children. They take the opportunity, the awkward times
We
to
sure do.
let everyone know that they want to be heard. But tonight we're so excited. So please go ahead and like and share. Welcome to Women in Blazers. Again, we're so happy to have you be a part of our professional development conversation. My name is Elisha B. Cash, and I am the founder of the National Women's Empowerment Ministry. I am the CEO of Jackson HR and Administrative Services. I am the co-pastor of Global Leadership Christian Center and the director of GLCC Job Network. And I love women, and I love leadership, and I love to lead. And so that's my passion, and that's what drives our conversation for tonight. And we want to make sure that we're providing relevant information that not only empowers you, but allows you to take an opportunity to reflect and see where you can have an opportunity of growth, and then take your career or your business to the next level. So again, welcome, welcome, welcome. And let's begin diving into our topic tonight: why women should ask for more money. Now, I put it out there on all my social media platforms. I said, women, this is a season that we should not leave any money on the table. Okay. It's just a part of who we have become. And in our becoming, we're learning more about how to come to the table and negotiate salaries and how to advocate for ourselves. And I believe that when we know better, that we should start doing better. And so tonight is not only just a conversation, but it's a call to action that we should kind of get out there, begin advocating for ourselves, learning, getting as much knowledge. And so these women tonight are going to drop some great advice to all of us. So right now, if you're watching, please go ahead and share, especially if you know someone that needs this type of information, needs needs to be supported in a way of how to lean in to negotiate their salary, ask for more money, renegotiate their salary. Just a little advice on how to go about doing that, and the importance of why they should do this. I believe the topic tonight is going to help us close the pay gap. I believe, and that's the reason why we want to kind of pull up to the table. So go ahead and like and share tonight. And so let's just go ahead and dive into the conversation, and want to talk about a most recent article that I kind of share. A recent article with CNBC, Make It, shared that working women are seeing the current labor market where employers are desperate to hire as an opportunity to negotiate for more money. It could signal a shift in helping close the wage gap. Do you find any truth to this statement, ladies, that tonight, due to, I guess they say that it's an employees market, do you see any truth in this statement that this could actually be a benefit to women in helping us close the wage gap?
Angela, would you like to go first, or would you like me? So thank you so much for sharing the article. I think, what has been happening that we've seen with the pandemic, which I think is really exciting and thrilling, is people taking back their power when it comes to their jobs. So really thinking about priorities and values and what's important, and making sure that that job and that environment and that company really supports and fits that. And I think that is a huge and tremendous benefit of the Great Resignation, is that we are prioritizing our mental health, our spiritual health, our emotional health, our families, our values over these toxic workplaces. So in terms of the pay gap, I think it is an employee market. It is a market to go out there and find the right fit for you. And I think you do have more leverage and negotiation power. The thing is that organizations also have to be committed to paying women the exact same salary they would pay a white man who would take the same position. So I think we have the onus to make sure that we actually have the tools, the resources, and the information to advocate for ourselves. But also, I do see it also as the company's perspective too, and their ownership in this process is making sure that they're doing everything that they need to do to have comparable pay. And I know, Angela, that you've been in the HR field for a very long time, and I'd love your perspective on that too. The organizational piece and how organizations can actually make that commitment to ensuring equal pay.
I really appreciate your comments. When I saw the article, I definitely thought it was a great opportunity for women to leverage it, because, every place we read right now, everybody's talking about the Great Resignation and how hard it is to find quality, competent employees and people who want to stay with an organization. And so because quality is in such demand, well, one of the things we know is that, of course, many of us bring that to the table. So if there was ever a time to have leverage, it's now. And maybe, while we're all, find that the circumstances that we find ourselves in currently are very unfortunate with COVID and all the effects of it, it still doesn't mean that we can't use it as an opportunity to maybe try to balance an unfair scale that has existed for, ever, as it appears. So on the HR side, we were chatting before we started broadcast. I spent most of my career in the federal government. And so I know we were talking also, and some of the literature we were reading about was transparency. Well, that's one of the things we had, though, right? In the federal government, salaries are not secret. And so I don't think inherently you will find men and women in the same jobs not making the same money, because it speaks to the transparency that exists. So my experience, really wasn't what many women experience. Jobs are based or classified based on the position, not who's in them. So therefore, whomever is in them, if it's a GS whatever, that job remains a GS whatever. Now, what I will say I saw as a pattern was certain positions that were more inclined to be held by a woman were maybe classified differently than positions that were inherently held by men. So that was the place where I saw the disparity.
That's so intriguing. And I think it's really, I mentioned to you before, I only worked for the federal government for 2 years. There are reasons for that. So bless you for your time there. You're absolutely right. Pay transparency in the government and the government structure is great. I feel like that's what every organization should be adopting, and especially when it comes to corporate America, we don't have that level of pay transparency. And in fact, New York City and New York State actually just passed a law where you now have to actually post the salary on job descriptions. And I was like, hallelujah, holla back. Like, why are we not doing that everywhere? Why is it that pay and salary isn't just transparent, not just when you're applying to a job in New York State, but when you're applying to a job everywhere? And then when you step into that job, why are we not talking more about compensation structures and giving people more of the information that they need to actually be knowledgeable and even just how this works? Because Angela, you've probably seen this too. I've had a lot of women that I've worked with and clients who don't even know what a compensation structure means. They don't know what a pay scale even means. So, we should be educating. And I do feel like the company should be involved in that, educating everyone unanimously about how they compensate, what structures look like, and what that range looks like. So we don't have this issue where women are saying, well, how much should I be asking for? And asking for less, because that we know that that's an issue where they just know what they should be making. Like when you're talking about the federal government, I love that about the federal government. Other things, I don't know.
Maybe not so much, right? But the other thing that you made me think about was the fact that, so I remember when I became an entrepreneur. So while this is different, is related. And the first time I had to negotiate or set a price for a service. And I remember talking to my husband. I was like, since I worked for the government for so long, there was no negotiation. This is your salary. This is the pay band. You enter at step one, unless, you got to meet or beat it when you get promoted, kind of thing. And so I found myself in my late 40s for the first time ever trying to have this discussion about what's my value, or what is the value of the work product that I create. And so like now that I coach women, coach entrepreneurs, I coach people that even work for, private organizations, I'm coaching them to negotiate. And most of them are in the same situation that I was in. They were like, you mean this is negotiable? Like, I don't have to take what they offer me? No.
Yeah.
And I had a similar situation, and I'm glad you kind of navigated to that, Angela. Being on a job because I too have an HR background, and was working for this particular company, and in this particular role at the time, there was another young lady that was doing the same job. And she was making maybe like 20 something more $1,000 than I was. And we were doing the same job, and we both had the same amount of education. I had more experience in the field than she had, but she had maybe more time with that particular company that I had. At the time, I did not have the well-to knowledge of how to advocate for myself, to even ask for more money. And so I wish, because people always ask me this question, what would you tell your younger self? And it will be always to ask more questions.
Yes.
So tonight, and in the spirit of transparency, because I know we have a lot of women that are in that space, what advice would you have for women that don't know how to advocate for raises and promotions, and how to advocate for themselves if they find themselves in a situation where they need to ask for more compensation?
So, well, this is, for me, this lends me to why I value mentorship so much. Because I don't know that there's ever this point where you can just jump in and say, hey, go advocate, right? But if you had a mentor, somebody that's invested in your growth journey and that you're having these conversations with, because for some organizations, it might be at the annual review time of year. Some organizations have clear structures as to how to do it, when to do it, and where to do it. Some have nothing. In some places, you'll never get a raise unless you ask for one, or if somebody else offers you more money. So for instance, my husband works in academia, and I know for a fact that his raises come once somebody else offers him more money. Up until that point, the university will say, we don't have it. Right. But then they find it the moment you get a job offer. So every industry is a little different. And the other piece of that is, even at that, though, I think there's a question that comes before that, which is inherently we start lower. And so even if everybody's getting a 5% raise, but if I started 3% back, I stay 3% back.
Yep.
And so going back still to that transparency piece, not only do I have to advocate for the increase, but I have to even know when there needs to be an increase plus some.
Yes.
And if we're not talking, then I'll never know. I know somebody right now who's been on their job for 30 years and they told me they've maybe had a raise twice.
Yeah.
Like, really?
Wow. Wow. Yeah. I love that. Angela, I so love that you brought up that communication piece, because that is such a big thing. I think that we do not talk about money enough. And that is something that, when I go out with my girlfriends to have my brunch on Sundays, like if I'm just with my great girlfriends, but my regular girlfriends, we're not talking money, we're talking about other things. But when I go out with my business women, we are talking money. We are talking money. We are talking strategy. We are talking offers. We are talking about all those things much more freely. When it comes to our careers and our lives, I do not think we talk about money enough. And I love that you're saying, like, get those mentors where you can have those conversations and get information. And I also say, like, ask the people who you work with too. And in fact, let's just put it out there. If you have a white male ally or sponsor, ask him, because I can tell you that he's making the money. So, if he really cares about sponsorship and allyship for you, there will be that transparency around not what you should be making, but what I'm making. I am making this. So think about how that looks, right? And then the other thing that I truly think is, first off, we have to start by giving ourselves a lot of grace. And the reason why I say that is because I grew up poor, very, very poor, where my parents would say to me, we don't have money. And then they would say, don't even ask, right? So how do you think that translates into me being in the workplace, then trying to advocate for something that didn't exist for my whole entire life, that I was taught to never ask for because it didn't exist. And now I'm supposed to hold all the ownership completely on my shoulders with all of those belief systems around money inherently within me. It's just a lot. It's a lot, and it's heavy. And so I think we always have to start with grace, like give ourselves some grace that you may not even know how to talk about it. You may not even believe it exists, right? Like you just may not even believe it's there for you. So I like to start there, and then from there, think about the beautiful strategy that Angela mentioned of talking about it, getting mentors, and then also educating yourself around what you should be realistically making for your role, your industry, and then add that tax, because we're definitely not asking for enough.
Well, too, I recently just literally said this to my daughter. I have a 26-year-old daughter, and she's in corporate America now. And recently she shared with me a new person in her same position makes more money than her. That was another woman, but she still was like, how's that possible? I said, because they probably asked for more. And I love shows like Shark Tank and all that stuff. And I just told her, one of the lines Mr. Wonderful always said, don't cry over money because money won't cry over you. Yes. We have got to see money as what it is. And it's a rate of exchange. That's all it is.
Angela, stay right there because you were about to lean into something so powerful. A lot of times, and so what I didn't say was I was disgruntled, because I,
Yeah.
like your daughter here, me and this same young lady, we were doing the same job, and we were making two different salaries, like not just a little couple of thousand, but a whole 20 some thousand, which is somebody else's salary.
Oh, yes, see, I'd be disgruntled too.
Yeah, I think we all got you there.
They get the side eye, look at me like.
Yes. But here's the thing, it goes back to what I later found out through coaching and mentorship, because I didn't have a mentor. I did not have a mentor. I did not have a sponsor. I didn't have an advocate where I was. So what was I? I was stuck. I was stuck and I was disgruntled. I didn't even know where to find a mentor, where to find an advocate. How do I get someone to sponsor on my behalf? I didn't even know how to do any of those three things that you all are speaking about. But what I also didn't realize too is I got the salary that I negotiated. Who knows? She probably negotiated her salary. And so we can't walk away from and say, well, they gave me. No, that's what you negotiated. So as women, we have to know when we come to the table that that's our time. And I'm speaking to everyone that's watching tonight. And I hope if you have any questions, please make sure that you drop it in the chat, because we want to answer any questions that you may have tonight. But a lot of times we walk away with the salaries we negotiated. So that was just so powerful. Another thing I wanted to bring up is education. I mentor a lot of women, and especially some of my younger women. Once they complete their degrees or their programs, and they're looking to get these particular salaries and bonuses or bumps up in their careers, we have been taught that education is supposed to add value to our compensation. So as education increases, a woman's earnings capability is supposed to increase as well. But are we still seeing that? That is what my question is. Because a lot of college educated women don't feel that they're seeing that increase as they're investing in their schooling.
Yeah.
That one's a hard one, and because I could go either way. And
Okay.
so, and here's the why. Because sometimes I think it definitely is degree specific. It can be in certain fields that you really see the jump, right? Like if you get a master's in something, and whether that's like, let's say accounting to be in a CPA, like you might see that hike, but depending on what it is, you may not. And so I would encourage people to just do the research. So you mentioned earlier there were some things that you didn't know until you knew it. So find out, like, what is the average salary for X career, and then with a bachelor's, and then so at least you go into it with a realistic expectation. And then what is the average salary for people entering that same career with a master's degree? And then you have to decide, or a PhD, is getting those, furthering those degrees going to be an ROI for you? But some people also go back and get degrees for reasons beyond money. And so I think each person has to really evaluate, like, what was the why behind wanting to get the degree. At one point, I thought I wanted a PhD. And then I thought about why I wanted it. And I was like, but do I really need a PhD to do that? I don't think so. So then I stayed at the master's. But I celebrate all my PhD friends, right? And the spouse and everybody else. But for me, the financial investment I did not see was going to net me what I was looking to have because of what I wanted to do with it. Like, I didn't want to teach. I didn't want to do some other things. It wasn't in something, that I needed to be Dr. Angela. So I could go either way on that. But what I will say is, on average, I think college educated women and individuals, as they get more education, they do make more money. I can't necessarily say it's commensurate with the amount of money they spent to get that degree.
Yeah, I agree 100%, Angela. I think it is really, it's the why first. Like, why are you doing what you're doing? And it is very degree specific and field specific. I do think, and I totally agree with that component. And I do also think that pay inequity is a systemic problem.
Mhm.
So what I think we also have to realize and recognize too, as women getting these degrees, is that that's not the only thing. That's not just going to jump you into a whole nother pay bracket. This is a systemic issue. This is a problem in different fields, in different areas, in different levels. So we still, you're absolutely right, Angela, have to go back to the knowledge, the education around salary, around pay, around our worth, and around what we should be making. Don't think, I mean, I have a PhD. I didn't think I was going to make more than some white dude with a PhD, the same one that I had. I had to go in there educated with the knowledge of how much is that person making? How much are these people in my same field area making, and then advocate for that. So we're fighting a systemic issue, and it sometimes doesn't matter what degree you have.
Exactly.
It's just you, unfortunately.
That's perfectly said. I have someone asked the question, being that education is a field that is predominantly governed by women, which we know, and we're talking about K-12 education. When working in education and you aren't able to negotiate your salary, should you leave the field?
Well, no, I wouldn't say leave, but I think that because, okay, so going back to the context of the question, which I took is because you can't negotiate, but then that means the men can't negotiate either. Mm-hmm. So if negotiating is not capable for either, then the field should be a little bit more leveled. So while I wouldn't say leave, I would say advocate. So if there's someone side by side, same number of years of experience, same education, and you two are, both teachers of the same subject, and there's a pay disparity, and the only thing that's different is one is a male and one is a female, then I think it's something that should just be brought to somebody's attention. Because, I don't believe in accusing people of intentionally doing things. And some of the articles that you shared with us really talked a lot about unconscious bias, right? Sometimes it is bias, conscious, sometimes it isn't, but it's not for us to get into people's heads. And so I would just say, I noticed that, Bob here makes, $10,000 more than me. Yet we have the same education, the same years of experience. So what's our next step? And then if that particular school won't honor that, then maybe you do look for a job in a different school. But if education is what you love and what you want to do, I say you stay in education.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I love that advocate, that's so, that word is great. I love that word. It's so powerful. I agree 100%. And I think it's really, also, I want everyone to also understand and get clear on your values, right? Like what's important to you. Because we're talking about pay equality, pay equity. So I think everyone should be paid equally. That should be a value that we all fight for. But what is it that's important to you? And if pay, and you can't get the pay you want, is important to you, don't leave the field if the education, as Angela said, is your thing. But think about how you can do that, your thing, in a different way in still the education space. Education is so broad. People are doing tech education in tech, and making buku bucks. So, you may want to think about, right. You may want to think about, what's my core values? Why did I get into this field? And what am I interested in sort of leveraging this to do in terms of my life, my career, and my money? And that might help you address that question.
Well, I'm so glad we're talking about this education field, because many research kind of alludes to the fact that your field of study has a lot to do with the pay gap between men and women. They're saying because women are choosing careers such as the education field, that is not as much robust when it comes to compensation, that's considered a low paying career field versus some of the other fields, then that is the reason for the pay gap. What do you all think about that?
Yeah. Well, first off, I'm going to start the movement to pay teachers more, because I think this is absolutely, I personally, this fires me up because my mom is a teacher, and it broke my heart. 2 years ago, I did my mom's taxes, and my heart broke into a million pieces because I could not believe how amazing of a teacher she is, how much she cares for these students, how long she has been in the field, and the amount of money she was making. I couldn't even, my heart broke. So the fact that teachers that are actually educating the next generation of youth who are going to take over this world and do amazing, wonderful, great things do not get paid what they should be getting paid is absolutely insane. I mean, that has to change completely. I don't like this whole theory that women select the field that pays less. Women are service-driven individuals who are all about community and service and uplifting and empathy. And we do tend to choose fields that have that drive, but those are the fields that are changing the world. So why should we then have to decide that we want to go back on our values to make money when we're the ones in fields that are actually driving this world forward? So for me, it's like I think that's a lame, it's a lame argument. Everyone should be getting paid their worth.
Yes.
I would agree. I also would agree that historically there are definitely some, because when you brought up education, you also made me think about like daycare workers. Like there are several categories of employees that are traditionally more women. Cashiers, like we can run the list. And I know, especially years ago, when I was a lot younger, there were certain positions, like I said, in our office that, I would look around and, 90% of this position is held by women and, 90% of this other position is held by men. And we had to do some reclassification for that very reason, because it was brought to our attention, like, neither one of these jobs require any, education beyond high school. They work the same hours. One is actually required to do some data entry, which was the one the women tend to do. And the other one was just more manual, yet the more manual one paid better. And so I just do think it's going back to, the point made earlier, it's systemic.
Yes,
These are things that are inherent in classifications and in job descriptions. And so, we as a society have to go back now and start laying these job descriptions side by side with with blinders on, not knowing who possesses what position more, so that we can be more equitable. But
I love that exercise.
Yeah.
Take that on.
And I think we would end up with a whole different dynamic if we did it blindly and just laid down what the work is and what it requires, because it's crazy.
I agree 100%. That would be an amazing exercise to do. And I think that would completely change everything if we did something like that and really thought about it from the scope of the job.
Yes.
Just what the work is.
Yes.
And the requirements to do it.
Exactly. The knowledge, the skills, and abilities. That's what we say, right? So essays.
Essays, right? Absolutely. Well, one of the things that I hear a lot of women, talk or ask me about is that, Elisha, walk me through asking the negotiation piece, because sometimes they have received it has been a case where it's more office politics, like people that get the raises or promotions based off of friendships and buddies. That. Okay, so that's how it is on the inside once you're on the inside. But walk me through how I negotiate if I'm coming in, and then walk me through if I'm in and I want to renegotiate my salary. Like, what does that kind of look like?
So I'll start with the coming in the door, because this is actually one of the things I do for a lot of my coaching clients. We research, going back to what, recently I was doing this with the incoming high school principal, ironically, education. And what we did was, and I live in Newark, New Jersey, I mentioned earlier, we looked at what are the average principal salaries in Newark. And that's where we started. And then we looked at so she was about to replace someone, that's why she was being elevated from assistant principal to principal. So what does this person make? And so we took all these variables into account, and then came up with, what is that range? Because I tell people, don't show up with one number, because then that shows up as inflexible. And a negotiation is supposed to be an activity where both parties come to the table willing to try to figure out what's the best solution so that both parties can walk away with a win-win. At least in this kind of, this is not like a labor union type negotiation. Because if you're going to start a new career in an adversarial position, I think you're just expecting to do nothing but fight the rest of your career. So if it can't be something that we're both looking to come away from a win-win, you already got a problem. From there, once you have your range, I always ask everybody that I'm working with, what's your final number? Like, you should know that before you even have a conversation. Because the reason why we're offended or all these other things when numbers go back and forth is because we say, well, that's not what I was expecting, but what did you want? And if you know what you want, then you know when you can walk away. And then the other part of that question for me is, am I willing to walk away? Because that's what you also need to know in negotiations, because if you're not going to get what you think you deserve, how comfortable are you saying, well, maybe we're just not a good fit for each other? And so those are hard questions. And everybody won't say that, because some people are like, well, I want this, but I also need a job. And so, but again, if that relationship is reciprocal, you care about me, I care about you, you value what I bring to the table. And then sometimes I tell people, well, what else can they give you? If it's not money, because sometimes there are some limitations. What else can they give you? Maybe it's a conference budget. Maybe it's, some other perks that will supplement that, so things you don't have to come out of pocket for, and it's to your benefit, because if they pay it that way, you also don't have to pay taxes on it. So there's other ways that you can have a compensation agreement that is bigger than just the cash that is your salary.
Yeah, I love that. And it's very similar when you're doing it internally as when you're doing it externally. So accepting a job offer. And first off, Angela, I love those questions of like, know your bottom line. That is so incredibly important, because it's also important to know your bottom line so that when they go lower than it, you do know, like, this is out of integrity with what I'm looking for. I'm going to have to pull out. And you're right that a lot of people do sort of say, well, I need to just accept this because maybe nothing else will come around. And so I always like to ask people, like, what if you knew the next job was going to come around? Would you really accept that? Because you got to stay within integrity with yourself. And so, when doing it internal, it's very similar. There are some perks to doing it internal, is that you can get more internal information about salary bands, specifically how your company structures salary around your actual job. So there's a little bit more information you can get and you can dig in. And then when you're positioning yourself for that internal pay raise, you really want to think about, what have I done to increase the company's bottom line? How have I added value? How have I done something that's really driven performance? How have I led the team? How have I accomplished wins? And that's a great way to position yourself for that conversation. So the conversation is really around, this is why I deserve it, because I've done all of these great things for you. I've also done my research in terms of how long I've been in this organization. This is well deserved to move to the next pay range or, pay band. So you want to have that kind of information really tangible there. And that's why I tell a lot of my clients, like, track what you're doing in your job, right?
Yes.
So it's so important. And I'm not gonna lie, like, I've done this early in my career where I was just kind of moving along and strolling along. But really give yourself that time. I ask my clients to, at the end of every single month, put it in your calendar, an hour where you sit down. It doesn't even have to be that long, but you sit down and you really think about, what have I accomplished across this last month? How did I add to the company's bottom line? What are some of my accomplishments? So that when you have to have those conversations, it's just seamless and it's easy. And that also helps to build confidence, because if you're constantly checking in with your wins and you're constantly checking in with what you're doing, you just naturally feel good about that. And a lot of times I hear people say, I deserve a salary because I'm working 5 people's jobs. Well, yes, you do, but doing this kind of exercise and checking in with your work allows you to recognize when your work is increasing much sooner than I've been doing this for the last 8 months. And now I'm thinking about a salary increase. So you can be positioning yourself to be asking for what you deserve much sooner because you're checking yourself.
No, those are some good points. So so one of the things that I was my responsibility was to write job descriptions and to work with classification. And often when people, so even in the government, you can go ask that your job be audited, right? As in, these are the duties that I'm doing and this is what it's classified as. But I think it's underclassified based on the technology changes, some other demands, yada, yada, yada. And so sometimes I was on the side of the management that was like, yeah, it's changed, but it's not that. And the other thing that people do misunderstand is that if they're acting in a position or something is temporary, that it's not a permanent add to their job, that it's a justification for a salary increase. Now, what it might be a justification for is a one-time bonus or a spot award or something like that, depending on how the organization writes it. But most of the time, if it's not a permanent altering to the core duties of the position, it doesn't warrant a pay increase. And then people leave frustrated because they're thinking, well, then I wouldn't have did all this extra work if I had known that legally you don't have to pay me any more money. But it's the truth.
No, it's absolutely true. And it goes back to what you've been talking about this whole conversation, which is educating yourself and asking questions, right? Like we've been talking about this, like continue to ask questions. So if, I'm kind of one of those people where it's like, okay, all of this new stuff got added. What does that mean? Can you talk to me about what that means?
Right.
So that's a great opportunity to do exactly what you're talking about, which is educate yourself and ask questions.
Yeah. And a good employer should, like I said, be transparent, but also, like I said, going back to the other point, then award them or reward them for taking on those additional duties, whether that's, again, a bonus. But so maybe because it's a one-time add-on for a finite period of time, then give them a chunk of money that's one time, but at least it shows I value you and I know you did more than what your job requires you to do. Yeah. And then that's why because that's why people get upset, because they don't feel valued.
Yeah. And it's important for us to speak up, because one of the things that I hear my clients say a lot, and you've probably heard this too, is my company doesn't value me. And I'll ask the question of, like, first off, what does value mean to you? Because that means a million different things to a million different people. And then when's the last time you've talked to them about this? And so we sometimes are having these internal conversations in our head about what people are doing to us. But, I like to always approach it from the standpoint of, listen, sometimes you're working at not good companies. Let's acknowledge that they exist, right? And not good bosses. Let's acknowledge that those exist too. But if you're slammed, sometimes you're just working with a boss, a supervisor, a manager who's also equally or even more slammed. Yes. And so to think that they are thinking about your pocket and your wallet is ridiculous. Like if you're thinking about it, and you should. Yes. But that's why we have to have these conversations. They are not easy conversations. They are hard conversations. But going back to unconscious bias, right? This might not even be bias at all. This just might be a manager or a supervisor who needs to get work done, knows that you are a great worker and will do it, and isn't even contemplating in their mind what that translates to. So it's your responsibility that if you feel you deserve more, to speak up and have that conversation.
Wow. And let me say that, and like you said, it's never an easy conversation to have. And that's why being equipped with the right knowledge, being empowered, I can tell you, for me, that's what it took. I had to have a coach that guided me. And someone asked me the other day, "Oh, what's the value of having a coach?" I posed that question out there. I put it out there. I said, "How do you have coaches?" And nobody answered. One person answered and said, "Oh, I have one." Another person said, "It's not in my budget." But there's finite wisdom for me. If you can't find it in a mentor, that you have to invest in your career. You have to invest in your tomorrow, your next. Professional development is so huge in that. And that's what we're offering. That's one thing. That's what the National Women's Empowerment Ministry through Jackson HR and Administrative Services is offering, is professional development. It's through the professional development pieces that you learn the value of your knowledge, skills, and abilities. You gain that confidence that you need to show up in spaces. You meet people who are not afraid to be transparent about their salaries, to say, "Hey, this is what I make and this is how I got there." Because sometimes you may be in a working condition where people are doing the work, but they're not transparent about what they make. And so women, we're just starting to do that, because we see that there's this huge pay gap and that we could do more together. We just kind of all say, "Okay, when I was doing X, Y, and Z, I was making 80,000. I did X, Y, and Z to negotiate to get to a 6-figure salary," or "This is what I did in order to get to." I had to get a coach to help me with that, because I didn't have a mentor. Did not have a mentor. Did not have a sponsor that said, "This is how you go out and do X, Y, and Z." And so I want to just say, for anybody that's watching, these two ladies that are here tonight, they're phenomenal. They both are coaches. They both have great programs. Follow them on LinkedIn. Find them on LinkedIn. Ask them about their services, and ask them how you can connect with them, because this is what it's all about, is making sure that you're connected with people that can empower you to go to the next level. Ladies, talk to me about.
I'm sorry. The coach in me just got. Can I just say one little thing?
Yes,
you better.
Yes.
But when you said it's not an easy conversation, there was just something in my heart that says, but it can be.
It can be.
And I think, one of the biggest things that I think, once I got a coach, when you brought up coaching, I smiled, because I do actually have 3.
Me too.
It's interesting though, because my coach helped me to understand things just are. We put the energy behind whether it's good, bad, easy, hard.
Yes.
I'm saying, "Oh, I got a big meeting today at work." Is it a big meeting, or is it a meeting? Because the word big, little, easy, hard, they're all relative.
Yes. Yes.
Hard compared to what?
Yes.
Asking your boss for a raise is probably a whole lot easier than talking to somebody about, your chances of coming through some kind of serious, medical thing, right? So when it's put in perspective, maybe it's not as comfortable as we would like it to be. But I think we, especially as women, have got to stop telling ourselves that it's hard to talk about these things. It's not hard. Just because we haven't done it doesn't mean we can't do it and we won't do it efficiently. So I just want us to maybe not call it hard or say it's not easy, but just say it's a conversation that maybe I haven't had before, but I'm willing to get out there and put my feet in the water.
I like that, because language is so important.
It is. I love everything you just said. I want to give it a million snaps.
Yes, me too.
It's so true. It is the way that we talk to ourselves and what we say is so incredibly important and valuable. And I don't think that these conversations have to be perceived as hard either. They are just new conversations. And in fact, going back to what we talked about before, if we just start having these conversations about money, and even just asking people around us about their experiences with negotiation, educating ourselves, all of that builds confidence. Part of the pathway to building confidence is knowledge and experience. So if you've got some knowledge and you're trying it out, even with friends and practicing, it will just feel easy. And I tell my clients all the time, like you were talking about, Angela, the bottom line number, right? Or even your ask number. I tell my clients, go around all day saying that number, just get your brain on board with just hearing the number come out of your mouth, right? So those are all things that you can be doing, small things that will just make this so much easier for you.
Yeah. And I would just even add to that, like you said, we were talking about whether it's easy or is it hard. It's all about positioning yourself. And what I find sometimes is understanding your value and your worth. We've all heard the quote, right? How you do anything is how you do everything. If I'm struggling to establish that at work, I can bet that there's someplace else in my life that that's showing up too.
Mm-hmm.
And so we are one person. And so that, going back to your statement about why having a coach and a mentor is so valuable, because when you begin to really know your value and your worth, and you can't articulate it in the workplace, you find that you're able to show up that same way and articulate it in your other relationships.
Yeah, 100%.
Well, ladies, if you're watching tonight, make sure you get connected with our upcoming Red Dress Brunch and Retreat, which is happening on June 2nd through June 4th. Again, it's a retreat and brunch. The retreat portion is professional development, and yours truly, Miss Jasmine, tonight is one of our speakers, our breakout session speakers, on how to negotiate your salary. So if you have more questions for Jasmine, you want to make sure that you register and that you sign up for her session, so you can say, Jasmine, this happened to me at work. How do I handle it?
I love it. I love those case studies. Yes.
Or if you're in a business and you're in a space where you're having to negotiate contracts, because that's exactly where I had to pick up my negotiating skills. How do you do that? And how do you become better at that? Angela, she broke it down so wonderfully tonight. And so I hope that you all walk away just as empowered as I have tonight. These ladies totally came in and rocked it. It is Women's History Month, and so we're talking about all things women. The month of March, and so I love the fact that we were able to talk about pay and the pay gap, and why women should ask for more money and not leave anything on the table. The price of gas has gone up. The price of milk has gone up. The price of bread has gone up.
So, I think wine has gone up, which is terrible. Wine
has gone up. So, ladies, you better learn how to negotiate your salary and be okay with it. Tonight, ladies, please tell them how they could connect with you if they want to learn more about you and your services.
Go ahead, Jasmine.
I practically live on LinkedIn, so you can and Instagram.
There, she has an apartment, 2-bed apartment on LinkedIn.
I know. It's so funny because I'm like, they should be giving me royalties or something. So you can follow me on LinkedIn at Jasmine Escalera, and also on Instagram at Jasmine Escalera Coaching. And shoot me a DM if you ever have a question on negotiation or your career. I'm always open to providing guidance and support.
And I can be found on LinkedIn at Angela Hooper-Menifield, my name, and my Facebook is Menifield and Associates, as is my Instagram. And my website is www.supervisoracademy.com, or I'm creating actually a new program for women, the Sisterhood of Successful Women. So you can reach me at www.getyouracttogether.coach.
Oh, I love that. You are right.
Let's go ahead, Angela. Okay. Well, you all know how to find me. I am on LinkedIn and I'm on Facebook and Instagram. Continue to follow the National Women's Empowerment Ministry, as well as Jackson HR and Administrative Services, and get in the room for the Red Dress Brunch and Leadership Retreat. You guys don't want to miss it. It's going to be powerful. It's going to be so empowering. It is the what I call the Networking in Red events of the year, and you want to make sure that you are in the room. So whether you're virtually in the room or in person in the room, make sure you get in the room, and the information is right below us. Thank you so much for having a seat tonight with us with Women in Blazers. We'll be right back here next Wednesday. Good night.
Good night.